The soft hum of conversation filled the grand ballroom of Seattle's waterfront hall, where towering glass walls reflected the city's shimmering skyline. Guests in tailored suits and glittering gowns mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their laughter blending with the faint notes of a live jazz band. This was no ordinary evening. It was the highly anticipated product launch for Cole MedTech, the city's leading medical technology company, helmed by the enigmatic Max Cole. Standing at the edge of the room, Max surveyed the crowd with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years in the spotlight. His sharp navy suit complemented his composed demeanor, but beneath his polished exterior lay an unshakable sense of isolation. For all his success, Max carried a quiet emptiness, a void deepened by his private struggles. Tonight, however, was not about him. It was about showcasing Cole MedTech's newest innovation, a device poised to revolutionize cancer detection. As Max stepped onto the stage, a hush fell over the room. His commanding presence silenced even the faintest murmurs. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady and authoritative. "Tonight is a milestone, not just for Cole MedTech, but for medical technology as a whole. Our innovation represents hope, a chance to catch the smallest signs before they become insurmountable challenges." Applause erupted as Max concluded his speech, though he barely registered the sound. He descended the stage, moving through the crowd as attendees rushed to congratulate him. Max offered polite smiles and firm handshakes, but his focus remained elsewhere. His success came with sacrifices he rarely admitted, even to himself: a failed marriage, lost friendships, and the ever-present shadow of his infertility. For years, these truths had driven him to bury himself in his work, building an empire that now stood as a testament to his ambition. From across the room, Helena Reed observed the CEO with practiced intensity. She blended seamlessly into the crowd, her dark emerald dress and calm confidence masking her true purpose. Officially, Helena was covering the event as part of her investigative beat, but her interest in Cole MedTech ran deeper. Rumors of unethical practices and corporate secrecy had piqued her curiosity, and tonight was her opportunity to gather clues. Helena's gaze lingered on Max as he exchanged pleasantries with Seattle's elite. He was a fascinating figure, controlled, enigmatic, yet undeniably charismatic. Beneath his poised exterior, she detected something few others likely noticed: a flicker of vulnerability, the kind that hinted at a man carrying heavy burdens. Her instincts, honed from years of journalism, told her there was more to Max Cole than the public persona. Helena's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of another powerful presence. Marcus Duval, CEO of Biotech Solutions and Max's fiercest competitor, strode into the ballroom. The air seemed to shift as whispers followed him like a trail. Marcus was known for his ruthless business tactics and had long sought to undermine Cole MedTech's dominance. His presence at the event was no coincidence. Helena watched as Marcus made his way toward Max. The tension between the two men was palpable, their exchange terse and veiled with professional civility. While she couldn't hear their words, their body language spoke volumes. Marcus leaned in slightly, his smile sharp and calculating, while Max's jaw tightened in response. Whatever they were discussing, it was far from friendly. Helena's curiosity flared. She inched closer to the pair, careful to remain inconspicuous. Tonight, it seemed, might yield more than just a product launch. It might uncover the beginnings of a much larger story. Helena couldn't make out the specifics of the conversation between Max and Marcus, but she caught enough to sense its gravity. Marcus's voice carried a tone of smug assurance, his words deliberately clipped to provoke a reaction. Max, on the other hand, maintained a stoic exterior, though his clenched jaw and rigid stance betrayed his irritation. Their exchange ended with Marcus offering a pointed smile before walking away, leaving Max standing alone amidst the bustling crowd. Helena's instincts sharpened. Whatever Marcus had said had clearly struck a nerve. She debated whether to approach Max directly, but quickly dismissed the idea. Tonight wasn't the time to reveal her intentions. Instead, she opted to observe him further, noting the way his polished charm slipped into something more guarded after his interaction with Marcus. Whatever Marcus was planning, it was clear that Max was prepared to confront it head-on, alone. Max exhaled slowly, his gaze scanning the room until it landed on the bar. He needed a moment to regroup, away from the handshakes and congratulatory murmurs that now felt suffocating. Slipping through the crowd, he made his way to the sleek marble counter and ordered a drink. The bartender slid a tumbler of whiskey toward him, and he took a slow sip, savoring the brief respite. Helena followed at a measured pace, ensuring her approach seemed casual rather than calculated. She perched a few seats away at the bar, ordering a glass of red wine. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was filled only by the faint clink of glassware and the hum of distant conversation. It wasn't until Max glanced her way that the connection sparked. "You don't look like the type who'd be at an event like this for the hors d'oeuvres," he remarked, his tone dry but tinged with curiosity. Helena met his gaze, her lips curving into a faint smile. "And you don't look like the type who needs an excuse to escape their own party." Max chuckled softly, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Touché." Helena took a small sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm Helena Reed," she offered, her tone smooth and disarming. "Journalist." "Max Cole," he replied, though the introduction felt unnecessary. His name had been on everyone's lips tonight. What brings a journalist to a medical product launch? Not exactly front-page material. Helena leaned in slightly, her expression neutral but intent. Sometimes the best stories aren't the ones everyone expects to find. Max tilted his head, studying her for a moment. "Is that so?" Before she could respond, the bartender returned with another round of drinks, interrupting their exchange. Helena took the opportunity to shift the focus. "Your speech tonight, it was impressive. You have a knack for commanding a room." Max shrugged, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Years of practice. But I suspect you already knew that." Helena smiled but didn't confirm or deny his assumption. Instead, she allowed the conversation to drift into lighter topics, weaving a subtle connection that neither fully acknowledged but both felt. For a brief moment, the polished facades they wore began to crack, revealing glimmers of the people they were beneath the layers of ambition and responsibility. As the evening wound down, the energy in the room began to fade, guests trickling out into the cool Seattle night. Helena finished her wine. Her curiosity about Max deepened, though she knew better than to push too hard too soon. Meanwhile, Max remained seated, swirling the last of his whiskey as his thoughts drifted to the confrontation with Marcus. Whatever lay ahead, he could feel the storm brewing. Helena stood, adjusting her dress as she prepared to leave. Before walking away, she paused and glanced back at Max. "Good luck, Mr. Cole," she said, her voice low and enigmatic. "I have a feeling you're going to need it." Max raised an eyebrow, his intrigue now firmly fixed on the mysterious journalist. "Good luck to you too, Ms. Reed," he replied, his tone equally cryptic. "Seems like we're both chasing something." Helena offered a final knowing smile before disappearing into the crowd. Max watched her go, a flicker of curiosity stirring within him. The night had taken an unexpected turn, one that promised complications he wasn't entirely sure he was ready for. Unbeknownst to either of them, their brief encounter had set into motion a chain of events that would unravel secrets, challenge loyalties, and forever alter the course of their lives. The sharp chill of New York's early winter seeped through the cracks of Helena Reed's apartment windows as she sat hunched over her small desk, the faint hum of city traffic her only companion. A white envelope rested in her hand, its contents laid bare across the desk. A set of ultrasound images and a doctor's report confirming what she had already suspected but struggled to accept. Triplets. Helena stared at the images, her mind reeling. How was this even possible? She recalled every word Max Cole had said during their brief but charged encounter in Seattle. His admission of infertility had seemed genuine, laced with a pain he hadn't tried to hide. Yet here she was, the unmistakable evidence of 3 tiny lives growing inside her, defying both logic and everything Max believed about himself. She pushed the images aside and buried her face in her hands. Her career as an investigative journalist had conditioned her to face harsh truths and unravel complex puzzles, but this was a different kind of challenge. One that wasn't about chasing a story or exposing corruption. It was about the future of 3 lives and her own unsteady place in the world. Helena had spent years building her independence, and the idea of tethering herself to someone as complicated as Max, no matter the circumstances, sent a chill down her spine. Her phone buzzed on the desk, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen, an email from her editor. The subject line read, "Cole MedTech and Biotech Solutions, leads for a bigger story." Helena hesitated before opening it. The email contained a forwarded tip suggesting that Marcus Duval was aggressively acquiring shares in Cole MedTech through shell companies, a move that could destabilize Max's control over his own company. Helena's journalist instincts flared to life, momentarily drowning out the personal storm she was weathering. She had planned to keep her distance from Max after that night, convinced their connection was fleeting. But now, with this revelation and the growing need to confront him about the pregnancy, she realized she couldn't stay away. Her mind raced as she considered her options. Seattle wasn't just a potential goldmine of information, it was where answers to her most pressing questions lay. With a deep breath, Helena reached for her laptop and began drafting an itinerary. Returning to Seattle meant more than just chasing a story. It meant upending everything she had carefully built in New York. Still, she couldn't ignore the growing urgency in her chest. She needed to see Max, not only for the sake of the triplets, but also to understand the storm brewing around him and Marcus. Hours later, her suitcase sat by the door as she paced the apartment, her nerves rattling like dry leaves in the wind. The stakes were higher than she'd ever faced before, and the weight of uncertainty pressed heavy on her. But she had made her decision. By the time the sun rose, she would be on a plane back to Seattle, prepared to confront a man who was about to learn his life had changed in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The roar of the jet's engines faded as Helena stepped into the bustling terminal at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The city's crisp air greeted her as she exited into the waiting chaos of honking taxis and hurried travelers. For a moment, she hesitated, clutching the strap of her bag as she considered what lay ahead. Returning to Seattle wasn't just about chasing leads anymore. It was about confronting the truths she couldn't run from. Helena checked into a modest hotel near the city center, opting for a location far from the glitzy venues Max frequented. She needed time to plan her approach, both professionally and personally. That evening, as the city lights flickered outside her window, Helena pulled out the ultrasound images again. The stark reality of her situation stared back at her. This wasn't just her secret anymore. It was Max's, whether he was ready for it or not. The next morning, Helena walked into the lobby of Cole MedTech's headquarters, the sleek glass tower looming against the grey Seattle sky. She clutched her press badge tightly, using it as both a shield and an entry pass. The receptionist glanced at her, then directed her to a waiting area. As she settled into the chair, her heart raced, every beat echoing the uncertainty of what she was about to do. When Max appeared, his presence commanded the space even before he spoke. Dressed in a sharp grey suit, his expression was unreadable, but his piercing eyes locked onto hers immediately. "Miss Reed," he said, his tone both professional and guarded. "I wasn't expecting you." Helena rose, her palms damp. "We need to talk," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "It's about something that affects both of us." Max gestured for her to follow, leading her into a private conference room. The glass walls offered a view of the city below, but Helena's focus remained on the man across from her. He leaned against the table, arms crossed, his sharp features etched with skepticism. "What's this about?" Helena took a deep breath, reaching into her bag. She placed the ultrasound images on the table, her gaze unwavering. "It's about this, Max. I'm pregnant, and they're yours." For a fleeting moment, Max's composed exterior faltered. His eyes flicked down to the images, then back to Helena, his expression a mix of disbelief and something else, something unspoken. "That's not possible," he murmured, his voice quieter than she expected. But the words hung in the air, and Helena knew the storm was just beginning. Max stared at the ultrasound images spread out on the table, the faint black and white shapes almost taunting him with their clarity. His initial disbelief slowly gave way to a simmering frustration that he struggled to suppress. He straightened, fixing Helena with a piercing gaze. "You're certain they're mine?" he asked, his tone sharp but controlled. Helena met his eyes, refusing to waver. "I've done the math, Max. I haven't been with anyone else. And as impossible as it seems, the doctors have confirmed this isn't a mistake." She paused, her voice softening slightly. "I'm not here to complicate your life or ask for anything, but you deserve to know." Max exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair as he paced the room. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Years of medical diagnoses had reinforced the belief that having children was an impossibility for him. The idea of it now, triplets no less, felt like some cruel twist of fate. Yet, as much as his logical mind resisted, a tiny ember of hope flickered beneath the surface. "I'll need proof," he said finally, his voice firm. "This isn't something I can just take at face value." Helena nodded, having anticipated his reaction. "I figured as much. A DNA test will settle it. But Max—" She hesitated, her expression unreadable. "This isn't just about biology. There are 3 lives at stake here. They're not hypothetical, they're real, and they'll need a father." Her words hung heavily in the air, cutting through the tension with a quiet truth. Max turned toward the glass wall of the conference room, staring out at the grey Seattle skyline. He had spent so long building an empire to fill the void in his life, convincing himself that legacy could replace family. Now, faced with the undeniable evidence before him, he felt the weight of what he might gain and lose. Before he could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Amelia Grant, his ever-efficient PR manager, stepped inside, a tablet in hand. Her usual composure slipped for a moment as her eyes flicked to Helena and the ultrasound images on the table. She recovered quickly, her voice brisk. "Max, we've got a situation. The board is requesting an emergency meeting. It seems Marcus Duval is making moves again." Max's expression darkened, his focus shifting sharply. "What kind of moves?" he demanded, his tone edged with irritation. Amelia hesitated. "There's talk of an anonymous investor acquiring a significant number of Cole MedTech shares. We suspect it's linked to biotech solutions." Helena watched as the conversation unfolded, the tension in the room shifting from personal to professional in an instant. She stood, gathering the ultrasound images. "This isn't the right time," she said quietly. But we're not done talking about this, Max. He glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable. No, we're not, he replied, before turning back to Amelia. Let's deal with Marcus. Helena left the room, her thoughts a whirlwind of uncertainty. As the conference room door closed behind her, she couldn't help but feel that her confrontation with Max had only scratched the surface of what lay ahead. As Helena stepped into the elevator, her grip tightened on the folder containing the ultrasound images. The encounter had gone exactly as she expected. Max was composed, skeptical, and defensive. But beneath that exterior, she had seen a flicker of something else. Hope, doubt, fear. She wasn't entirely sure, but it was enough to convince her that this wasn't over. The elevator descended smoothly, the polished steel walls reflecting her tense expression. When the doors opened, Helena walked briskly across the lobby, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She had barely stepped outside into the crisp Seattle air when her phone buzzed. Glancing at the screen, she saw a name she hadn't expected: Peter Reed. Helena frowned as she answered. "Peter?" "Helena," her cousin's voice came through, steady but with a note of urgency. "I got your message. You said it was important. What's going on?" Helena hesitated, her gaze drifting to the towering Cole MedTech building behind her. "I need your help. It's about Marcus Duval and his connection to Max Cole. There's something big happening here, and I think it's tied to a hostile takeover." Peter let out a low whistle on the other end. "Duval, huh? That's a name I haven't heard in a while. You know he's got a history of burying anyone who gets in his way, right?" "I know," Helena replied, her voice firm. "But I've got a story here, Peter, something that's bigger than corporate greed. And there's a personal angle, too." Peter was silent for a moment before speaking again, his tone softening. "You sound like you're in deep, Helena. Are you sure you want to go up against someone like Duval?" Helena's jaw tightened. "I don't have a choice." Peter sighed. "All right, I'll dig into his financials and see what I can find. But be careful, Helena. Marcus doesn't play fair." Helena ended the call, her determination hardening. If Marcus was orchestrating a move against Max, she needed to uncover the truth, not just for her story, but for the lives tied to it. As she turned toward her hotel, her thoughts shifted briefly to Max. She couldn't ignore the storm brewing around him, nor the fact that they were now inextricably linked. Inside the Cole MedTech boardroom, Max sat at the head of the table, surrounded by tense faces. Amelia's report confirmed their suspicions. Marcus was indeed behind the anonymous investor. The revelation stoked a fire in Max, his calm exterior giving way to a steely resolve. "If Marcus thinks he can strong-arm me out of my own company, he's in for a surprise," Max said, his voice low and deliberate. "Let's show him what happens when he underestimates Cole MedTech." Even as he spoke, a small part of his mind drifted to Helena and the unexpected truth she had dropped on him. One storm was enough to handle, but now his life seemed caught in the crosswinds of two, and there was no turning back from either. The sun had barely risen over Seattle, casting a pale golden glow across the city's glass towers, when Helena found herself seated in a small cafe tucked into the corner of a bustling neighborhood. A steaming cup of coffee sat untouched in front of her, its aroma doing little to ease the tension that had settled in her chest. Across the table, Peter Reed adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, his brow furrowed as he scrolled through documents on his laptop. "This is worse than I thought," Peter muttered, his voice low but sharp. "Marcus isn't just circling Cole MedTech. He's already sunk his claws in. Look at this." He turned the screen toward Helena, showing a web of transactions that led back to several shell companies, each quietly amassing Cole MedTech shares. Helena leaned closer, her pulse quickening. "These names, they're all fronts for biotech solutions?" Peter nodded grimly. Marcus is using intermediaries to stay under the radar, but it's clear what his endgame is. He's positioning himself to seize control of the company from within, and if this timeline is right, he's closer than anyone realizes. Helena's mind raced. She had suspected Marcus was plotting something big, but seeing the extent of his manipulation laid out so plainly made her realize just how dangerous he was. "If he takes over Cole Medtech," she said, "he'll bury any evidence of wrongdoing, and Max, he won't stand a chance." Peter tapped a few keys, bringing up another file. "There's more. These documents suggest Marcus is also targeting Max personally. Anonymous tips to regulators, leaked internal memos. He's trying to paint a picture of corruption and incompetence." Helena exhaled sharply, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She had come to Seattle prepared to confront Max about the triplets, but now it was clear that their entanglement extended far beyond their personal connection. Marcus wasn't just a threat to Max's company, he was a threat to everyone who relied on Cole Medtech's innovations. "Do you have enough to prove this?" Helena asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Peter hesitated, his fingers drumming against the table. "Not yet. I can trace the money back to Marcus, but it's circumstantial at best. We need something concrete, something that ties him directly to these transactions." Helena nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we dig deeper, whatever it takes." Peter studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "You're really in the thick of this, aren't you?" Helena met his gaze, unflinching. "This isn't just about Max or the company, Peter. There are lives at stake, innocent lives. I can't walk away from this." Peter sighed but nodded, his respect for her determination evident. "All right, let's find what we need to bring Marcus down." As they gathered their things and prepared to leave, Helena couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Marcus's influence was growing by the day, and the more she uncovered, the clearer it became that he would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Later that day, Helena found herself standing outside the sleek, reflective facade of Cole Medtech's headquarters once more. Her earlier conversation with Peter lingered in her mind, fueling her determination. She was here to share what they had uncovered with Max, even if their last interaction had left her unsure of where they stood. Whatever tension existed between them had to be set aside. This was bigger than either of them. As she stepped into the building, Amelia Grant caught sight of her from across the lobby. The PR manager's sharp eyes narrowed briefly before she approached, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Ms. Reed," Amelia greeted, her tone polite but laced with caution. "Back so soon?" "I need to speak with Max," Helena said, her voice firm. "It's urgent." Amelia glanced at her watch, weighing the request. "He's in a meeting with the board," she replied. "But I'll let him know you're here. Wait in the lounge." Helena nodded, though her patience was wearing thin. She sat in the modern lounge area, surrounded by the hum of Cole Medtech's operations. Her eyes flicked to the digital screen on the wall, which displayed recent headlines. One caught her attention immediately. "Biotech Solutions targets Cole Medtech in hostile bid." The article described Marcus Duval's increasing pressure on Max's company, confirming everything she and Peter had suspected. Her thoughts were interrupted when Max appeared, his expression tight but focused. "Helena," he said, his tone neutral as he gestured for her to follow. They walked into a smaller conference room, the glass walls providing a view of the bustling offices outside. "What's so urgent?" Max asked, his arms crossed as he leaned against the table. Helena wasted no time, setting down the folder she had brought with her. "It's Marcus," she said, flipping open the documents Peter had compiled. "He's orchestrating a hostile takeover. We traced multiple shell companies back to him. He's buying up shares, leaking damaging information about you, and setting the stage to oust you from your own company." Max scanned the documents, his jaw tightening as he pieced together the implications. "How did you get this?" he asked, his tone cautious. "Peter," Helena admitted. "He's been digging into Marcus's financials for me." Max looked up sharply, his skepticism evident. "Peter Reed? Your cousin? The same Peter who was involved in those exposés years ago? He's not exactly someone I'd call reliable." Helena bristled at the comment but kept her focus. "He has his flaws, but he's good at what he does. And right now, you need someone who can uncover what Marcus is hiding." Max's gaze lingered on her, calculating. Finally, he exhaled, nodding. "If this is accurate, Marcus has gone further than I anticipated. I'll need time to validate it, but thank you." Helena nodded, but the relief was short-lived. She could tell from Max's expression that he was already formulating a plan, one that could escalate the conflict in ways neither of them fully understood. As they parted, Helena realized that this battle was only just beginning. Max sat in his penthouse that evening, the dim light from the city casting long shadows across the room. The documents Helena had presented lay spread out on the glass coffee table in front of him. Each line, every connection between the shell companies and Marcus Duval, painted a clear picture of betrayal and calculated ambition. Max leaned back, gripping a tumbler of whiskey, the amber liquid untouched. His mind raced with questions, strategies, and a gnawing sense of unease. He had always known Marcus was ruthless, but it was personal. The idea of losing everything he had built, the empire he had poured his life into, was unthinkable. And yet, this wasn't just about his company anymore. Helena's presence and the startling revelation of the triplets had thrown his carefully controlled world into chaos. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he called, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Amelia entered, her tablet in hand, her expression as sharp as ever. "I've got some updates," she said, setting the device on the table. "The board is split. Half of them are panicking because of Marcus's leaks, and the rest are waiting for you to reassure them that you're still in control." Max exhaled sharply, setting his drink down. "And Marcus?" Amelia sat across from him, tapping her screen. "He's ramping up the pressure. We've received inquiries from regulators about supposed improprieties in Cole Medtech's clinical trials. Anonymous tips, conveniently timed." "Conveniently fabricated," Max muttered, his jaw tightening. "He's trying to paint me as reckless and unethical. He wants to make me look unfit to lead." Amelia nodded. "Exactly. The question is, how do you want to respond?" Max stared at the documents again, his mind churning. "We need to stay ahead of him. Dig deeper into these shell companies, find something we can take to the board, and put together a statement for the press. Nothing defensive, just enough to show we're confident and in control." Amelia hesitated. "And Helena? She's connected to this now, whether we like it or not. The media's going to sniff her out soon enough." Max's gaze hardened. "Leave her out of it. She's not part of this." Amelia raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. "Fine, but you need to be careful, Max. Marcus isn't just playing for control of Cole Medtech. He's playing to ruin you." As Amelia left, Max leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Her words echoed in his mind, a reminder of just how high the stakes had become. He had fought too hard to let Marcus win now. Whatever it took, he would protect what was his company, his reputation, and perhaps, if he dared to admit it, the fragile connection he was beginning to feel toward Helena and the lives she carried. The next morning, Max arrived at Cole Medtech headquarters earlier than usual, a determined edge to his stride. His plan was already in motion. Amelia had mobilized the legal and PR teams overnight, while his internal investigators began digging deeper into the financial trails leading to Marcus's shell companies. The walls were closing in, but Max refused to let Marcus outmaneuver him. As he entered the executive floor, Max's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Helena. For a moment he debated whether to answer. Their last conversation had left unresolved tensions, and the weight of both their personal and professional entanglements pressed on him. Finally he swiped to answer. "Helena," he said, his tone measured. "I found something," she began, her voice laced with urgency. "Peter's been following a lead. Marcus has been bribing former Colmedtech employees to back up his false accusations. We have names, Max, and it gets worse. One of them is willing to talk." Max stopped in his tracks, his grip on the phone tightening. "Willing to talk?" he repeated, lowering his voice. "Are you sure they're credible?" "He's scared," Helena admitted. "Marcus has been threatening him to stay quiet, but Peter convinced him to come forward. If we can protect him, he'll testify." Max's mind raced. A witness could be the break he needed, something tangible to present to the board and deflect the regulatory scrutiny. "Get me his details," Max said firmly. "I'll have my team handle it." "Max!" Helena hesitated, then continued cautiously. "He wants to meet with you directly. He doesn't trust anyone else." Max frowned, the request catching him off guard. He didn't have time for this, not with the board and Marcus breathing down his neck. But he knew Helena wouldn't have called unless it was important. "Fine," he said after a moment. "Set it up." They agreed on a meeting later that afternoon at a discreet location. As Max ended the call, a flicker of admiration crossed his thoughts. Helena wasn't just determined, she was relentless, and he could see why she was so respected in her field. Hours later, Max found himself in a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of the city, seated across from a nervous man in his late 40s. The man, an ex-researcher named Tom Carrington, fidgeted with his coffee cup, his eyes darting toward the door, as if expecting Marcus to burst through at any moment. "I don't want trouble," Tom started, his voice shaky. "But what Marcus is doing, it's not right." Max leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. "No one is asking you to put yourself in harm's way, Tom. But if you have information that can stop this, now's the time to speak up." Tom glanced at Helena, who sat silently nearby, offering a reassuring nod. "He approached me months ago," Tom confessed. "He paid me to fabricate reports about Colmedtech's clinical trials. At first I didn't know what it was for, but when I saw the leaks in the media, I realized I'd helped him build his case against you." Max's jaw tightened, anger flashing briefly in his eyes. "Do you have proof?" he asked. Tom nodded, reaching into his bag and pulling out a folder. "Emails, transaction records, even the scripts he sent me for the interviews. It's all here." Max accepted the folder, his expression unreadable. "This helps, Tom, more than you know." As they parted ways, Helena lingered, watching Max closely. "What now?" she asked. Max glanced at the folder, his grip firm. "Now, we make sure Marcus pays for every move he's made." Helena didn't miss the determination in his voice, nor the way his shoulders squared as he walked out. The battle was far from over, but Max was ready for it, and she realized she was too. Max's office was silent, save for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass walls. He sat at his desk, the folder of incriminating evidence against Marcus open before him. The documents from Tom Carrington were damning. Emails detailing the fabricated reports, financial transactions linking Marcus to shell companies, and even direct threats Marcus had sent to keep Tom silent. Max's fingers drummed against the polished wood as he reviewed the material once more, his expression unyielding. A knock at the door broke his focus. "Come in," he called, already knowing it would be Amelia. She entered, her sharp heels clicking against the floor as she approached. "The legal team has gone through the documents," she said, placing a summary report on his desk. They confirm everything Carrington said. This could dismantle Marcus's case if we play it right. Max nodded but didn't look up. And the board? They're restless, Amelia replied. The latest leaks have them questioning whether we can weather this storm. You'll need to show them something definitive to turn the tide. Max leaned back, exhaling slowly. They'll get what they need. I'll call an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Marcus thinks he can push me out, but he's underestimated how far I'm willing to go to protect this company. Amelia smirked faintly. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. Max allowed himself a small, humorless smile before his gaze shifted to the clock on the wall. The DNA results from the clinic were due any moment now, a fact that had lingered in the back of his mind despite the corporate chaos surrounding him. He hadn't mentioned the test to anyone, not Amelia, not even Helena. Whatever the outcome, it felt like a line he needed to cross alone. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. The clinic's number flashed on the screen. He picked it up, his voice steady despite the tension tightening his chest. Max Cole. Mr. Cole, the voice on the other end began, professional and clear. This is Dr. Patel from the clinic. I wanted to confirm that we've completed the analysis you requested. Max's grip on the phone tightened. And? There was a brief pause before Dr. Patel spoke again. The results are conclusive. You are the biological father of the children. The words hit Max with the force of a tidal wave. He sat back, the weight of the revelation settling over him like a tangible thing. For years, he had accepted the idea that fatherhood was impossible, a cruel certainty he had long since buried beneath layers of ambition and control. Now, that certainty had been shattered. Thank you, he said quietly before ending the call. He sat in silence for several minutes, the reality of the situation unfolding in his mind. He wasn't just fighting for his company anymore. He was fighting for a future he had never thought possible. A family. His thoughts were interrupted by another knock at the door, this one softer. Max? Helena's voice came from the other side, hesitant but steady. Come in, he said, his voice betraying none of the whirlwind inside him. Helena entered, her gaze immediately locking onto his. I heard from Peter. The evidence is solid. Marcus won't recover from this if we handle it right. Max nodded, his expression unreadable. Good, he replied, gesturing for her to sit. There's something else we need to discuss. Helena hesitated but complied, sitting across from him. What is it? Max reached for the folder, but instead of the documents on Marcus, he pulled out the DNA results. Sliding them across the desk, he watched her reaction carefully. The results came in. It's confirmed. I'm the father. Helena's breath hitched slightly, her composure momentarily faltering. She picked up the paper, scanning it quickly before meeting his gaze again. I told you, she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of relief. Max leaned forward, his tone firm but not unkind. This changes everything, Helena. We need to figure out what happens next, not just with Marcus, but with us. Helena nodded, her expression resolute. I've been thinking the same thing. Whatever this is, Max, we need to face it together. For the first time, Max allowed himself to believe that might be possible, but he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Not with Marcus still looming in the shadows and the stakes higher than ever. Max leaned back in his chair, folding his hands together as he studied Helena. Her resolve was clear, her determination to see this through matching his own. But there was something else in her expression, an unspoken fear, one he couldn't ignore. He exhaled, his voice softer than before. Together doesn't mean this will be simple. Marcus won't stop, and this situation with the board will only get worse before it gets better. Helena nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. I know. But I also know that backing down isn't an option for either of us." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Max, I didn't come to you just to deliver this news. I came because I trust that you'll do what's right, for Cole MedTech, for the Triplets, and for me. That has to mean something." Her words struck a chord in Max. Trust wasn't something he gave or received easily, but Helena had shown time and again that she wasn't just another journalist chasing a headline. She was willing to fight, not just for her story, but for the people involved. It was a quality he found both frustrating and admirable. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. "It does mean something," he said finally, his tone steady. "And I'll prove it. But we need a plan, one that ensures Marcus doesn't just lose this fight, but can't come back from it." Helena's expression hardened. "Peter and I are still digging. There's more out there. We just need time to connect the dots. Marcus's reach is extensive, but he's sloppy in covering his tracks. If we can uncover enough to expose him publicly, the board will have no choice but to rally behind you." Max nodded. "Good. Keep working with Peter. Meanwhile, I'll call an emergency meeting with the board tomorrow. They need to see that I'm in control and that Marcus's actions are a direct threat to the company's future." Helena hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. "And what about us? Where do we fit into this plan?" Max's gaze softened, the question catching him off guard. For a man used to compartmentalizing his life, blending the personal and professional was uncharted territory. "We take it one step at a time," he said after a moment. "But know this, I'm not walking away from any of it. Not the company, not the fight with Marcus, and definitely not you or the Triplets." Helena's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, her shoulders relaxing for the first time that day. "Good," she said, "because I don't plan on walking away either." The air between them felt lighter, a fragile but significant truce forming as they prepared for the battles ahead. Helena rose to leave, her movements confident despite the weight of the day. Before she reached the door, Max called out to her. "Helena," he said, his voice carrying a rare note of vulnerability. She turned, waiting. "Thank you for trusting me with this." She nodded, her expression softening. "Just don't make me regret it." As the door closed behind her, Max returned his attention to the folder on his desk. The DNA results, the evidence against Marcus, the board's wavering trust. It was all interconnected, and the stakes couldn't be higher. For the first time in years, Max wasn't just fighting for his company or his legacy. He was fighting for something far more personal, and he wasn't going to let anyone take it away from him. The morning sun barely pierced through the overcast Seattle sky as Helena paced in her hotel room, her phone pressed to her ear. Peter's voice crackled on the other end, his tone sharp and urgent. "I've connected the dots," Peter said. "Marcus isn't just targeting Cole MedTech through the shell companies. He's been funneling money to lobbyists and journalists to spread false narratives about Max and the company's operations. This isn't just a hostile takeover, it's a full-blown smear campaign." Helena sank onto the edge of the bed, her brow furrowed as she processed the information. "How solid is this?" she asked. Peter hesitated. "It's strong enough to hold up in a public exposé, but not enough for legal action, yet. We need more proof. Marcus is careful about keeping his name off the most damning evidence, but his overconfidence is creating cracks." Helena exhaled sharply. "This could change everything if we can expose it, but we need to be strategic. Timing is everything. If Marcus catches wind that we're onto him, he'll double down." "Agreed," Peter said. "I'll keep digging. Meanwhile, you should loop Max in. He'll need to prepare for the media fallout." As the call ended, Helena sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their discovery pressing down on her. She knew Peter was right. This was the kind of leverage Max needed to regain control of his narrative and strengthen his position with the board. But the stakes were higher than ever, and one wrong move could unravel everything. Later that morning, Helena walked into Cole Medtech's headquarters, her steps purposeful. The receptionist barely looked up as she made her way to the elevator, her thoughts consumed by the impending confrontation with Max. When she reached his office, she found him seated at his desk, his focus on a stack of documents. He looked up as she entered, his expression shifting from neutral to intrigued. "Helena," he said, setting the papers aside. "What brings you here this early?" She placed her bag on the chair beside her, her voice steady. Peters uncovered more. Marcus isn't just buying shares, he's buying influence. Lobbyists, journalists, anyone he can use to manipulate public perception. He's building a narrative that paints you as a reckless CEO who's lost control. Max's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Helena continued. "We have proof, but it's not enough for a legal case. Still, it's enough to expose his tactics publicly if we handle it carefully." Max leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in thought. "If we go public with this, it'll shift the board's perception and force Marcus into damage control. But it also risks escalating his attacks." Helena nodded. "That's why we need to be deliberate. If we time this wrong, we lose the element of surprise." Max studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Then we play this carefully. I'll call Amelia. We'll strategize a controlled release to the media, one that protects the company while putting Marcus on the defensive." Helena felt a flicker of relief. Max was composed, decisive, and ready to act. But as she watched him pick up the phone to call Amelia, she couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was about to reach its peak. By mid-afternoon, the Cole Medtech war room was buzzing with quiet intensity. Max, Amelia, and Helena sat around the sleek conference table, joined by a few key members of the company's PR and legal teams. Charts, reports, and evidence against Marcus were spread out in front of them, while a large screen on the wall displayed a live draft of the media statement they were crafting. Amelia tapped her pen against the table, her sharp gaze scanning the room. "If we're going to do this, we need to control the narrative from every angle. The statement needs to be airtight, no room for misinterpretation." "Agreed," Max said, his voice calm but firm. "The board needs to see that we're proactive, not reactive. This isn't just about defending ourselves, it's about showing strength." Helena spoke up, her tone measured. "We also need to anticipate Marcus's counterattack. Once this goes public, he'll shift gears. He's not the type to sit quietly while we dismantle his plans." Amelia nodded, her fingers flying across her tablet as she jotted down notes. "We'll prepare talking points for any media inquiries and brief the board immediately after the release. This way, they're equipped to respond confidently." Max's phone buzzed, interrupting the discussion. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "It's Marcus," he said flatly, silencing the call without hesitation. Amelia raised an eyebrow. "He's feeling the heat. That's a good sign." "Or a warning," Helena added, her instincts kicking in. "He knows we're moving against him." Max leaned forward, his tone decisive. "Let him. We're not backing down." The team worked tirelessly over the next few hours, refining the statement and coordinating their strategy. By the time the final draft was approved, the tension in the room was palpable. Max stood, addressing the group with a calm authority that steadied even the most anxious among them. "This is just the first step," he said, his gaze sweeping across the table. "Once the statement is out, the focus will shift to Marcus. Stay sharp and don't let your guard down. He's not going to take this lightly." As the team dispersed, Helena lingered, her eyes meeting Max's. "You handled that well," she said, her voice quieter now that the room had emptied. Max offered a faint smile. "It's not over yet." "No," But you're taking the fight to him, she replied. That counts for something. Max studied her for a moment, his expression softening. Helena, thank you. For this, for everything. I don't say it enough, but I couldn't do this without you. Helena felt a warmth spread through her, but before she could respond, Amelia reappeared at the door. Max, the board is ready for you. With a nod, Max straightened, his professional demeanor snapping back into place. Let's get this done. As he left for the boardroom, Helena watched him go, her thoughts swirling. The battle against Marcus was far from over, but for the first time she felt a glimmer of hope. Not just for Cole Medtech, but for the fragile bond she and Max were building. The boardroom was tense, the air heavy with anticipation as Max entered, his every step purposeful. The members of Cole Medtech's board, a mix of seasoned veterans and newer faces, sat around the polished oak table, their expressions ranging from concerned to outright skeptical. Marcus's recent moves had rattled their confidence, and it was clear that Max needed to deliver more than just reassurances. Amelia was already seated at the far end of the table, her tablet at the ready. She gave Max a slight nod, a silent signal that the groundwork had been laid. Max placed a neatly bound dossier on the table in front of him and let his gaze sweep across the room before speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice steady and authoritative. I won't waste your time with empty promises or evasions. You've seen the headlines and you've heard the rumors. Marcus Duval is not just attempting a hostile takeover, he's orchestrating a campaign to discredit this company and by extension me. Murmurs rippled through the room, but Max raised a hand, commanding silence. I've spent the past several weeks gathering evidence that proves Marcus's actions go far beyond the bounds of ethical competition. What I'm about to share will not only expose his true intentions, but also give us the leverage we need to counter his attacks. He opened the dossier and slid copies of key documents across the table. The board members leaned in, scanning the contents with growing intensity. Emails, financial transactions, and a list of Marcus's shell companies laid bare a web of deceit and manipulation. Amelia spoke up, walking them through the highlights with the precision of a seasoned strategist. This is just the beginning, she concluded. Our internal investigation is ongoing, but what we've uncovered so far is enough to raise serious questions about Marcus's conduct. He's not just targeting Max, he's jeopardizing the integrity of Cole Medtech as a whole. One of the older board members, a man named Richard Grant, adjusted his glasses and looked directly at Max. This is compelling, Max, he said, his tone cautious. But how do you propose we handle this? Taking it public could be risky, especially if Marcus retaliates. Max nodded, acknowledging the concern. I agree. That's why we're pursuing a two-pronged approach. First, we've already drafted a statement addressing the broader issues without revealing all our cards. This will reassure our stakeholders and the public that we're taking decisive action. Second, we're preparing a legal case against Marcus based on the evidence we've gathered. Another board member, a woman with sharp features named Elaine Parker, frowned. And if Marcus escalates, he's not going to back down easily. That's exactly why we need to act swiftly and decisively, Max replied, his gaze unwavering. Marcus thrives on intimidation and chaos. By exposing his tactics, we strip him of his power and regain control of the narrative. The room fell silent as the board members exchanged looks, their initial skepticism beginning to waver. Max could see the shift, small but significant, as they began to trust his leadership again. He leaned forward, his voice firm but measured. Cole Medtech has always stood for innovation, integrity, and resilience. I won't let Marcus, or anyone else, undermine that. But I need your support to see this through. After a moment of tense silence, Richard nodded slowly. You have my vote, Max. One by one, the others followed suit, until a unanimous agreement was reached. Amelia caught Max's eye, a glimmer of satisfaction in her expression. The first battle had been won, but the war was far from over. As the boardroom cleared, the tension that had filled the space began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious optimism. Max lingered for a moment, watching as the members filed out, their conversations hushed but carrying notes of agreement. Amelia stayed behind, tapping on her tablet as she prepared a summary of the meeting's outcome. "That went better than expected," she remarked, her tone professional but carrying a hint of relief. "The board's back on your side, for now." "For now isn't enough," Max replied, his voice low but firm. He gathered the remaining documents on the table and placed them back into the dossier. "Marcus won't sit quietly after this. If anything, he'll double his efforts. We need to be ready." Amelia nodded, already anticipating his next move. "I'll finalize the press statement and coordinate with legal to make sure we're covered. But Max, don't underestimate him. Marcus is calculating and he's desperate. That makes him dangerous." Max met her gaze, his expression unyielding. Desperate or not, he's not going to win this. Amelia left shortly after, leaving Max alone in the boardroom. He glanced out the large window overlooking the city, his thoughts momentarily drifting to Helena. She had played a pivotal role in bringing the evidence to light, and he couldn't ignore the sense of gratitude and something deeper that he felt toward her. But there was no time to dwell on that now. The stakes were higher than ever, and every move mattered. Meanwhile, across the city, Helena sat in Peter's makeshift office, a cluttered space filled with laptops, open files, and hastily scribbled notes. Peter leaned back in his chair, his face illuminated by the glow of his computer screen as he clicked through documents. "This is everything we've got on Marcus," he said, motioning to a growing stack of evidence. "But there's one piece that doesn't fit." Helena raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Peter clicked to another screen, pulling up a financial report. "There's a large sum of money that Marcus funneled into an account overseas. It's recent, and it doesn't match his usual patterns. It's like he's preparing for something." Helena leaned closer, her brow furrowing. "You think he's planning an exit?" "Maybe," Peter admitted. "Or maybe it's something bigger. Whatever it is, it's not good." Helena sat back, her mind racing. If Marcus was moving funds, it could mean he anticipated Cole Medtech's counterstrike and was fortifying himself. "We need to figure out where that money is going," she said. "It could be the key to stopping him." Peter nodded, already typing furiously. "I'll track it. But Helena, be careful. Marcus doesn't just fight back, he destroys anything in his way." Helena knew the risks, but she also knew they couldn't afford to back down. Marcus had already caused irreparable harm to Cole Medtech and threatened the livelihoods of countless employees who relied on the company's innovations. She wouldn't let him win. Back at Cole Medtech, Max's evening was interrupted by an unexpected call. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening when he saw the name, Marcus Duval. For a moment he debated ignoring it, but something compelled him to answer. "Max," Marcus's voice came through, smooth and mocking. "I hear you've been busy." Max's grip on the phone tightened. "What do you want, Marcus?" "Just a friendly warning," Marcus replied, his tone dripping with feigned camaraderie. "You're playing a dangerous game. You might want to consider whether it's worth it." Max's voice hardened. "The only dangerous game here is yours, and you're about to lose." Marcus chuckled, the sound cold and calculating. "We'll see about that. Just remember, Max, everything has a price." The call ended abruptly, leaving Max staring at the screen. He could feel the undercurrent of menace in Marcus's words, a reminder that his rival wasn't just a businessman, but a predator who thrived on intimidation and manipulation. Max leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Marcus was pushing harder than ever, and the stakes had never been higher. But for the first time, Max felt something stronger than anger or frustration. He felt resolve. Marcus had underestimated him, and that would be his downfall. As the night deepened, Helena returned to her hotel room, exhaustion settling over her. But before she could unwind, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw a text from Peter. "I found something. Meet me first thing tomorrow." Helena's pulse quickened. Whatever Peter had uncovered, it could be the breakthrough they needed. She replied with a quick acknowledgement before setting the phone down, her thoughts shifting to Max. They were making progress, but she knew the road ahead would be treacherous. Looking out at the city lights, Helena made a silent vow. Whatever it took, they would bring Marcus down, not just for ColMedTech, but for the future she was beginning to envision for herself, Max, and the lives they were now fighting for. The morning broke with a heavy drizzle, a hallmark of Seattle's ever-changing weather. Helena sat across from Peter in the same dimly lit cafe they'd made their unofficial war room. Between them lay a laptop, its screen displaying a complex series of transactions that Peter had painstakingly traced overnight. "This is it," Peter said, his voice low but firm. "I managed to track that offshore account. The money isn't just sitting there, it's being funneled into a private research facility Marcus owns in Vancouver." Helena leaned forward, her brows knitting in concentration. "A research facility? What kind of operations?" Peter clicked through a series of files, pulling up documents that detailed the facility's projects, or rather, its lack of transparency. "It's vague, but the timing lines up with when he started his smear campaign against Max. My guess, he's using it to develop a product to undercut ColMedTech's biggest innovation." Helena's mind raced. If Marcus is secretly developing something using stolen tech or unethical practices, it could destroy Max's reputation and the company in one blow. This isn't just about a takeover, it's sabotage on a massive scale. Peter nodded. "Exactly. And if we can tie this facility to his broader scheme, it'll give Max all the ammunition he needs to take Marcus down for good." Helena stared at the screen, her resolve hardening. "We need to move fast. Marcus won't sit idle if he suspects we're onto him. Have you shared this with Max yet?" "Not yet," Peter replied. "I wanted to run it by you first. But we need to let him know now." Helena nodded, pulling out her phone. "I'll call him." The phone rang twice before Max answered, his voice sharp with focus. "Helena, what do you have?" "Proof that Marcus is operating a research facility in Vancouver," Helena said, quickly explaining the connection between the funds and the stolen innovations. "Peter thinks it's the centerpiece of his plan to sabotage ColMedTech." There was a pause before Max responded, his tone measured. "That's exactly the kind of leverage we need. Get me everything you have on that facility, and I'll handle the next steps." Helena hesitated. "Max, if we're going to expose this, we need to do it carefully. If Marcus catches wind of what we're planning—" "I know," Max interrupted, his voice softening slightly. "We'll be careful. Meet me at the office in an hour. Bring Peter." As the call ended, Helena turned to Peter. "You're coming with me. We need to make sure Max has everything he needs." Peter hesitated, his usual confidence giving way to a flicker of doubt. "Helena, you know Marcus won't take this lightly. If he realizes I'm involved—" Helena placed a hand on his arm, her voice firm. "We don't have a choice, Peter. This is our chance to stop him. We have to take it." Peter nodded reluctantly, closing the laptop and gathering the documents. As they left the cafe, Helena couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the eye of the storm, but she also knew there was no turning back. Helena and Peter arrived at ColMedTech's headquarters just as the rain picked up, the drizzle turning into a steady downpour. Inside, the building buzzed with activity, but the tension in the air was palpable. Employees moved with purpose, their faces set with determination, as if sensing the high-stakes battle unfolding at the company's core. Max was waiting for them in his office, his expression grim but focused. Amelia stood nearby, reviewing a series of documents on her tablet. The moment Helena and Peter stepped in, Max gestured for them to join him at the large table in the center of the room. "Show me what you've got," he said, his voice firm. Peter wasted no time. He connected his laptop to the conference room screen, displaying a map that highlighted Marcus's financial trail leading to the Vancouver facility. "Here's the flow of funds," he explained, pointing to the timeline he had compiled. "Marcus has been funneling money into this facility for months, and it coincides with his efforts to destabilize Colmed Tech. If this is what we think it is, he's not just building a competing product, he's using stolen data to do it." Amelia frowned, her sharp eyes scanning the details. "This isn't just illegal, it's corporate espionage. If we can tie this to the leaks about Colmed Tech's trials, we can prove Marcus has been orchestrating the entire campaign to ruin us." Max nodded, his jaw tightening as he absorbed the information. "What about the facility itself? Do we have anything concrete on what they're developing?" Peter shook his head. "Not yet. The records are vague, and Marcus is smart enough to keep the most incriminating details off the grid. But if we can get someone inside—" "That's too risky," Amelia interjected. "If Marcus gets even a whiff that we're investigating the facility, he'll bury everything and claim we're the ones overstepping." Helena, who had been quietly watching the exchange, spoke up. "What about bringing this to the authorities? If we hand over the evidence and let them investigate, it takes the heat off Colmed Tech." Max's gaze shifted to her, his expression thoughtful. "It's an option," he admitted, "but it could also slow things down. The longer this drags out, the more damage Marcus can do. We need to act decisively." Peter hesitated, then spoke. "I might have another lead. There's a former employee from that facility, a data analyst who left under suspicious circumstances. If we can track him down, he might have the missing piece we need." Max's eyes narrowed. "Do it. Find him and bring me whatever he's willing to share." Peter nodded, already typing furiously on his laptop. Helena turned back to Max. "And what about the board? Are they ready for this?" "They're as ready as they'll ever be," Max replied. "But we need to give them something solid. Marcus has too many allies in high places, and we can't afford any doubts when we take this public." Amelia stepped forward, her tone brisk. "Then we focus on two things: securing that witness and preparing for the fallout once this breaks. Marcus isn't going to go down without a fight." Max leaned forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Neither are we." Helena glanced at Peter, then back at Max. The stakes had never been higher, and the next steps would determine everything, not just for Colmed Tech, but for the futures they were all fighting for. Helena and Peter arrived at Colmed Tech's headquarters with a renewed sense of urgency. The rain had picked up, soaking their coats as they made their way inside. Max was waiting for them in his office, the tension in his posture palpable as he glanced up from the documents spread across his desk. "Show me what you've got," he said without preamble, gesturing for them to sit. Peter opened his laptop, pulling up the detailed reports he had pieced together overnight. The facility is officially listed as a research center for innovative medical solutions, but the money trail tells a different story. Marcus has been funneling funds through a network of shell companies, masking its true purpose. Based on what I've found, he's using it to reverse engineer Colmed Tech's proprietary technology. Max's expression darkened as he leaned over the screen, scanning the evidence. "If this gets out, it won't just ruin Marcus, it'll discredit every claim he's made against us." Helena nodded. "Exactly. But we need to confirm what's happening inside the facility. Right now, this is circumstantial. It's solid, but Marcus could spin it as an exaggeration or coincidence. Max sat back, his mind working quickly. Then we get confirmation. Amelia is already working on a press strategy to control the narrative. But we'll need undeniable proof before we move forward. Peter hesitated, his voice cautious. I can dig deeper, but getting inside that facility, it's risky. I'll handle the risks, Max replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. I know someone who might be able to help, an old contact with experience in uncovering operations like this. If we're going to expose Marcus, we'll need to do it from every angle. Helena's brow furrowed. Who is this contact? A private investigator I've worked with before, Max explained. Discreet and thorough. If anyone can get us the evidence we need, it's him. The room fell silent for a moment as the weight of the situation settled over them. Finally, Helena spoke. What about the board? Have they been briefed on this yet? Max shook his head. Not yet. I want to have everything lined up before I bring this to them. If we present this prematurely, it could backfire. Peter leaned forward. We don't have much time. Marcus is already escalating his attacks. If he suspects we're onto him, he won't. Max interrupted, his gaze sharp. Not until it's too late. Helena exchanged a glance with Peter, both of them sensing the growing stakes. All right, she said finally. Let's get to work. We'll keep digging on our end while you set up the next steps. Max nodded, his resolve unwavering. This ends with Marcus exposed for who he really is. No more games. As Helena and Peter left the office, the storm outside mirrored the turbulence inside ColMedTech. They were moving closer to the truth, but with each step, the risks multiplied, and they all knew that Marcus wouldn't go down without a fight. As Helena and Peter stepped out of Max's office, Amelia was already waiting for them in the hallway, her expression as sharp as ever. What's the status? She asked, falling into step with Helena as they made their way toward the elevator. Helena recapped Peter's findings, keeping her voice low as employees passed them in the hall. It's big, Amelia. If Max's investigator can confirm what's happening at that facility, it'll be the final nail in Marcus's coffin. Amelia nodded, her tablet tucked under her arm. Good. I've been in touch with some key media contacts to keep them on standby. Once we have concrete proof, we'll control the narrative before Marcus even has a chance to respond. Peter, trailing slightly behind them, glanced at Amelia. What about Max's reputation? Even if we expose Marcus, there's going to be fallout. That's what the strategy is for, Amelia replied coolly. We focus on the facts, Marcus's corruption, his illegal tactics, and the threat he poses to the industry. Max isn't just defending himself. He's protecting the integrity of medical innovation. The elevator doors slid open, and the three stepped inside. Helena leaned against the mirrored wall, her thoughts churning. They were making progress, but the closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. Marcus was a master manipulator, and if he realized they were closing in, he wouldn't hesitate to strike back. As the elevator descended, Peter's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing. It's my contact in Vancouver, he said, stepping to the side to take the call. Helena and Amelia exchanged a look as the elevator reached the lobby. He's good at this, Amelia said, gesturing to Peter. But I hope he understands how high the stakes are. He does, Helena replied, and so do I. Later that evening, Max sat in his penthouse, the city lights sprawling out before him. The investigator he'd contacted earlier, a man named Luke Harper, sat across from him at the sleek dining table. Luke was a no-nonsense figure, his demeanor calm but sharp, with an air of quiet confidence that suggested he'd seen his share of high-stakes operations. This facility in Vancouver, Luke began, flipping through the file Max had provided. If what you're saying is true, Marcus isn't just stealing tech, He's running an entire operation based on deception. That's not just unethical, it's criminal. Max nodded, his jaw tight. Exactly. But we need definitive proof. Can you get us inside? Luke closed the file, meeting Max's gaze. It won't be easy. Facilities like this are locked down tight, especially if Marcus is trying to hide something. But I've handled worse. What do you need? Max asked, his tone direct. A distraction, Luke replied without hesitation. Something to divert their attention long enough for me to get in and out. You're already making noise with your counterattacks. Use that to your advantage. Max considered this, his mind working quickly. Amelia's press strategy will be the perfect cover. We'll leak just enough to make Marcus think we're focused elsewhere. Luke smirked faintly. That should do it. I'll head to Vancouver tonight and get started. You'll hear from me when I have something. As Luke stood to leave, Max walked him to the door. Be careful, Max said. Marcus is dangerous. Luke offered a brief nod. So am I. The following morning, Helena met Max in his office, the air between them charged with unspoken tension. She had spent most of the night going over Peter's findings, trying to anticipate Marcus's next move. But as she watched Max pace the room, she realized he was carrying far more than just the weight of the company's survival. Luke's en route to Vancouver, Max said finally, breaking the silence. If anyone can get us what we need, it's him. Helena crossed her arms, her gaze steady. And if he can't? He will, Max replied, his confidence unwavering. We don't have another option. Helena hesitated, then stepped closer. Max, I know this is about more than just the company. You're fighting for your legacy, your employees, your reputation. But don't forget why you're doing this. Don't lose sight of what really matters. Max stopped pacing, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, the guarded facade he always wore slipped, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. I haven't forgotten, he said quietly. Not for a second. Helena held his gaze, the tension between them thick but unspoken. She wanted to say more, to reassure him that he wasn't alone in this fight, but before she could, Amelia appeared at the door, her expression urgent. We've got a problem, Amelia said, stepping inside. Marcus just scheduled a press conference for this afternoon. He's trying to get ahead of us. Max's expression hardened. Then we need to act fast. Get everyone in the war room. It's time to show Marcus he's not the only one who can control the narrative. Helena followed Max and Amelia down the hall, her mind racing. The pieces were falling into place, but the stakes were higher than ever. As they prepared for the next phase of the battle, she couldn't shake the feeling that the endgame was drawing near, and that it would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The steady beep of hospital monitors filled the sterile air, a stark contrast to the chaos that had preceded Helena's arrival. She lay in the hospital bed, her breathing shallow but steady as nurses moved around her, checking the machines and taking notes. The complication had come on suddenly, a sharp pain, followed by dizziness that left her unable to stand. By the time she had arrived at the hospital, the doctors were already preparing for an emergency evaluation. Max arrived minutes later, his usually composed demeanor replaced with a rare and raw concern. He moved quickly down the hallway, his heart pounding in sync with his hurried steps. When he reached her room, he paused at the door, taking a moment to steady himself before stepping inside. Helena looked up as he entered, her face pale but her eyes steady. You didn't have to come, she said softly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Of course I did, Max replied, moving to her bedside. He hesitated for a moment, then took her hand in his. What happened? The doctors said it's pre-eclampsia, Helena explained, her voice trembling slightly. They're monitoring me and the triplets, but it's serious. Max tightened his grip on her hand, his jaw clenching. "And the babies?" "They're stable for now," she said, her eyes flickering with both hope and fear. "But they might have to deliver early if things get worse." Max sat down, his mind racing. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on him, making the battle with Marcus feel insignificant by comparison. "Helena," he began, his voice low, "you're not going through this alone. Whatever happens, I'm here." Helena blinked back tears, her strength wavering for the first time. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this. I wanted them to have a chance, a real chance." "They will," Max said firmly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "I won't let anything happen to them. Or to you." Before Helena could respond, a doctor entered the room, her expression calm but serious. "Ms. Reed, Mr. Cole," she began, glancing between them. "We've reviewed the latest tests. The babies are holding steady, but we're seeing signs that your condition is worsening. If it doesn't improve soon, we'll need to move forward with delivery." Helena's breath caught, and Max felt his chest tighten. "What are the risks?" he asked. "For the babies, premature delivery carries its challenges," the doctor explained. "But we've prepared for this scenario. For Helena, the longer we wait, the higher the risk of complications." Max nodded, his mind already calculating their options. "Do what you need to do," he said, his voice steady. "Just keep them safe." Helena looked at him, her eyes searching his. "Max." "We'll get through this," he said, his tone soft but resolute. "All of us." The doctor nodded and left the room, leaving Helena and Max alone once more. As silence settled over them, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily, but neither let go of the other's hand. For the first time, they weren't just partners in a fight against Marcus or the world. They were partners in something far greater and far more personal. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. Nurses moved in and out of the room with practiced efficiency, checking Helena's vitals and preparing for the possibility of an early delivery. Max remained by her side, his calm exterior masking the storm of emotions churning within. Every beep of the monitors, every whispered word from the medical staff felt like a reminder of how precarious the situation was. At one point, Amelia arrived at the hospital, her usual sharp demeanor softened by genuine concern. She stood quietly at the doorway, watching Max as he leaned over Helena, speaking to her in low, reassuring tones. After a moment, she stepped forward, catching Max's attention. "How is she?" Amelia asked, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. Max straightened, running a hand through his hair. "The doctors are monitoring her, but it's touch and go. They may have to deliver the babies early." Amelia nodded, her expression somber. "Is there anything I can do?" "For now, just keep things under control at the office," Max replied, his tone clipped but not unkind. "I don't want Marcus using this as an opportunity to make another move." Amelia hesitated, then placed a hand on his arm. "Take care of her, Max. Everything else can wait." Max watched as she left, her words lingering in his mind. For someone so focused on control and strategy, it was an unusual reminder that some battles couldn't be fought with power plays or calculated moves. This was one of them. As the night deepened, the decision was made. The doctors returned with solemn expressions, explaining the need to proceed with an emergency delivery. Helena listened intently, her face pale but composed, while Max stood at her side, a steadying presence amid the chaos. "We'll take good care of her and the babies," the lead doctor assured Max. "You can stay in the waiting area during the procedure." Max's jaw tightened. He hated the idea of being separated from Helena during such a critical moment, but he knew better than to argue. "Keep me updated," he said, his voice low. Helena reached out, her hand trembling slightly as it found his. "Max, whatever happens, Don't," Max interrupted, his voice firm but soft. "Don't say anything like that. You're going to be fine. They're going to be fine." Helena's lips quirked in the faintest hint of a smile. Always so confident. "Someone has to be," Max replied, his tone lightening just enough to draw a small laugh from her. As the medical team wheeled her away, Max stood frozen in the hallway, his fists clenched at his sides. For all his resources, his power, his influence, none of it mattered in that moment. All he could do was wait. Hours passed like days, each second stretching into an eternity. Max paced the waiting room, his thoughts a chaotic mix of worry and hope. Every so often, a nurse would appear with an update, but none of them brought the resolution he desperately craved. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to seep through the hospital windows, a doctor approached him, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and reassurance. "Mr. Cole," she began, her voice calm, "the delivery was successful. Ms. Reed is stable and the babies are in the NICU. They're small but strong. We'll be monitoring them closely." Max's shoulders sagged with relief, the weight of the night lifting slightly. "Can I see them?" he asked. The doctor nodded. "You can see Helena first. She's asking for you." Max followed the doctor down the hallway, his steps quickening as they neared Helena's room. When he entered, he found her lying in the hospital bed, pale but awake. Her eyes lit up when she saw him, a tired but genuine smile spreading across her face. "They're here," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Max moved to her side, taking her hand in his. "And so are you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You scared the hell out of me." Helena let out a soft laugh, tears welling in her eyes. "I told you. I don't back down." Max leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Neither do I." For the first time in what felt like forever, the tension between them eased, replaced by a quiet, shared joy. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they had crossed one of the most difficult bridges together. And for the first time, Max allowed himself to hope that their future might hold something more than just survival. It might hold a family. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the serene lakeside home, its gentle rays reflecting off the calm water. Inside, the air was filled with a quiet hum of activity. Helena sat in a cozy armchair near the large bay window, cradling one of the triplets in her arms. The baby stirred slightly, letting out a soft sigh before settling back into sleep. She glanced at the clock on the wall, a small smile tugging at her lips. It had been weeks since their tumultuous arrival into the world, and though the road had been anything but smooth, they were finally home. From the kitchen, Max's deep voice carried through the house, calm but authoritative. He was on a call with Amelia, finalizing the last pieces of Colmedtech's counter-strategy against Marcus. Though the company's future now seemed secure, there were still loose ends to tie up, and Max had taken them on with his characteristic determination. But even amidst the high-stakes corporate battles, his priorities had shifted. Every free moment not spent on the company was devoted to Helena and their children. The sound of the phone clicking off was followed by Max's footsteps as he entered the room. He paused in the doorway, his gaze softening as he took in the scene before him. "How's she doing?" he asked, nodding toward the baby in Helena's arms. "Peaceful for now," Helena replied with a small laugh. "Unlike her brothers, who seem to think sleep is optional." Max chuckled, moving to kneel beside her chair. He reached out, gently brushing a finger along the baby's tiny hand. "She's perfect," he said quietly, his voice filled with wonder. Helena looked at him, her heart swelling at the tenderness in his expression. This was a side of Max she hadn't seen before, a man unguarded, wholly present, and deeply connected to his new role as a father. "You're good at this, you know," she said softly. Max glanced up, a faint smile touching his lips. "I had good motivation." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining briefly before he stood. "Speaking of motivation, there's someone here to see you." Helena raised an eyebrow as Max stepped out of the room. Moments later, Peter appeared, his usually disheveled look somewhat polished for the occasion. He carried a small gift bag and wore an awkward but genuine smile. "Thought I'd drop by," Peter said, holding up the bag. "You know, to officially meet the new members of the family." Helena laughed, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "You look like you're about to meet royalty." "Well, they kind of are," Peter quipped, handing her the bag, "at least in your world." Helena opened the bag to reveal a set of tiny onesies, emblazoned with playful slogans. One read, "Future Journalist," while another said, "CEO in Training." She laughed again, shaking her head. "You're impossible." "That's why you keep me around," Peter replied, his grin widening. But as his gaze shifted to the baby in Helena's arms, his expression softened. "You did good, Helena. All of you." Helena's smile turned wistful. "We had a lot of help. From you, from Max, from everyone who stood by us." Peter nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. "You deserve this, Hel. All of it." Helena glanced toward the kitchen, where Max was now tending to one of the boys. "Maybe we do," she murmured, her voice filled with quiet gratitude. As the evening settled in, the house grew quieter. The triplets were finally asleep in their nursery, their soft breaths and occasional murmurs filling the room. Helena stood by the door, watching Max adjust a blanket over one of the boys. His movements were deliberate and gentle, a stark contrast to the fierce determination he exhibited in the corporate world. She leaned against the doorway, a sense of peace washing over her that she hadn't felt in months. Max turned to her, catching her gaze. "They're all set," he said softly, crossing the room to join her. Together they stepped out, leaving the nursery door slightly ajar. Downstairs, the fireplace crackled softly, its warm glow dancing across the walls of the living room. Max poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Helena as they sank into the plush sofa. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of the journey they had shared settling around them. "Amelia called earlier," Max said, breaking the silence. The statement went live. Marcus's operation in Vancouver has been shut down, and the board has fully backed Cole Medtech's countermeasures. He's done. Helena let out a slow breath, relief and pride mingling in her expression. "You did it," she said. "You protected everything you built." Max shook his head, his gaze steady. "We did it. You and Peter gave me the proof we needed. Amelia kept the company afloat when things were at their worst. It was all of us." Helena smiled, leaning back against the cushions. "Still, you faced him head on. Marcus underestimated you and what you were willing to fight for." Max was quiet for a moment, his eyes fixed on the flickering flames. "It wasn't just the company I was fighting for," he admitted, his voice low. "It was this, United States, them." He gestured toward the ceiling, where the nursery was just above them. Helena reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "You're not alone in this fight anymore, Max. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Max turned to her, his eyes reflecting a vulnerability that few had ever seen. "I know, and I'll never take that for granted." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the enormity of their shared experiences finally giving way to the simple joy of being together. Outside, the lake shimmered under the moonlight, a perfect reflection of the calm they had fought so hard to achieve. As the night deepened, Helena rested her head on Max's shoulder, her voice soft. "Do you think they'll understand one day how much we went through to make this life for them?" Max pressed a kiss to the top of her head, his voice steady. "They will, and when they do, they'll know they were worth every second of it." For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, The future stretched out before them, not as a daunting unknown, but as a promise of everything they had yet to build, together. And as the fire crackled on and the stars glimmered above, Max and Helena allowed themselves to embrace the peace they had earned, knowing that their family, against all odds, had become their greatest victory.